Welcome back, everyone, to Immigration and Jobs Talk. Really good to have you all. And I'm Nipasa Pradhan. I'm going to be your host. Before we go into today's topic and we welcome our guest, I have this very important disclaimer. By watching our videos, you agree and understand that the information provided by our experts and attorneys, including comments and replies from users, is not legal advice. Use of information is at your own risk. And once again, dearest friends out there, uh, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whatever time zone you have joined us from across the globe, I'm sure. And welcome everyone to Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. And today we are live not only on YouTube, but also LinkedIn and Facebook. And yes, I'm your host, Nipasa Pradhan. I'm going to be with you for the next hour, and we are going to have a very informative session today with none other than our guest. So I'm very thrilled to introduce you once again to our special guest for today's webinar, none other than Attorney Chand Parvathaneni, the managing attorney at the law firm of Sim Parvathaneni and Brown, based in Dallas, Texas. Well, Chan brings a wealth of experience in immigration law and is here to shed light on a very important topic today. And before that, Chan, really good to have you. Thank you so much for joining us today once again.
Thank you, Nipasa, and thank you all for joining. I think hopefully, again, we'll have a very informative session that's going to help the community. And the goal of all these discussions is everybody should know the rules and the laws, so everybody is complying with the laws of the country. And doing so, they improve their career and contribute to the society in the end.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And today's topic is what are common immigration scams and how can you report them? Today it's going to be very interesting because we have been hearing so much in the news almost daily, even if not daily, then it is weekly, but it is very common and we get to hear so many different types of scams. So today we're going to discuss most of them, and I'm sure Chand is going to give some very interesting points out there to keep in mind as well. So I'm very excited for today's session. What about you, Chand? What can we expect from this session today?
Sure. So, in general, most of the Indians that come to US, they typically come using employment-based visas, the non-immigrant H-1B visas, L-1 visas, student visas, or a lot of them get green cards using employment-based immigration. And what that means is most of the people are highly educated. In spite of that, in
Mhm.
spite of people being so highly educated, we always see people get scammed by people. So education sometimes
True.
is not enough because people, I mean, sometimes the way these scamsters scam people, they make it sound so real. So if people are not aware of what's going on, what kind of scams are happening out there, somebody might get
Mhm.
duped because most of the people want to follow the rules. So if somebody gets a phone call from somebody that says, "Hey, I'm a police officer," or "I'm somebody," people want to listen to the other side because they feel that the other side is a real person, a real government officer. But the scamsters, they use various means to impersonate the government officials, impersonate the police officers, impersonate
Yes.
immigration officials, and so on. And people sometimes, because it's a whole different country, coming from a different culture to a different culture, sometimes the expectations and way things happen, people perspective is different because the scamsters everywhere in the world, and the scamsters here are a different kind. The scamsters in India are a different kind. So what that
Yes.
means is there is always a chance that if people are not aware of what's going on and know their rights, uh, they might be scammed. So the goal is at least to give some information. How do you know if you're getting scammed, and what do you do if you, unfortunately, in that situation where you get scammed? How do you get some recourse? Do you have to go to the FTC? Do you have to go to the USCIS? Do you have to go to the ICE? So there are many enforcement agencies and many organizations as a part of the criminal justice system out here. And hopefully, this discussion today will shed some light on what people should do to not get scammed. And unfortunately, if they are scammed, what do you do?
Yes, we are definitely going to touch upon as many different types of cases as possible and try to learn from all that is out there to teach us from, all these fraudulent activities that are going on. around the globe and especially out here in United States. So definitely before we dive into this very critical discussion, I would really like to remind all you folks out there that this is an interactive session. So please feel free to drop your questions if you have any, especially regarding this topic, or maybe you have some experiences, or maybe you got scammed, and maybe you were almost scammed. Why not share those experiences and maybe ask your questions, and just drop your questions in the chat. We will do our best to address them here. And so, without further ado, let's get started, Chand. I have questions lined up for you too. So, let's have the first question.
Hmm.
What are some of the common immigration scams that people should be aware of, both in India and the United States?
So, when you're talking about immigration matters, the immigration scams, the scams because people are trying to go from one country to another country. So, there are specific scams that target these immigration scams. And most
Mhm.
commonly, what we talk about are the visa lottery schemes. And I'll talk about it. There is something called the green card lottery in US, and people use that green card lottery to scam other people. And there is something called notario fraud. It's a notary fraud. So what that does
Mhm.
is, we'll talk more about it. It's more about people acting like they're lawyers and cheating people. And we also see job offer scams. People who are trying to get on H1B, getting scammed by fake consultancies or bad consultancies, charging people for H1B. So we see a lot of job offer scams. We also see a lot of phone and email scams. So phone and email scams are where scammers impersonate officials of US immigration services. And we also see some family based immigration scams and so on. So first, we'll talk about the visa lottery scams. So in visa lottery scams, what happens is United States, US has a scheme called diversity visa lottery. So every year they take a green card lottery. So people who get enrolled in that lottery, and if they get selected in that lottery, they can actually get a green card. And however, the main thing to note is India is not a part of diversity visa lottery. There are some countries that are a part of diversity visa, and the reason for that is US as a country, we want diversity. So we're trying to have people from all over the world, and for that reason, what US does is countries that are not highly subscribed, say maybe a lot of African countries, a couple of European countries, etc., they're eligible to just go into the visa lottery, and if they're selected, they're eligible to get a green card. So a lot of people use that because if you Google online, you will see a lot of that information. So what people do is they act like they can get you more chances into the lottery, act like they can get you into the diversity visa lottery. And we've seen people where even if the country is not a part of the diversity visa lottery, they show some links online and make it look like you're eligible. So just
Mhm.
be careful. Diversity visa, which is the green card lottery, yes, it is real, but it is not available for Indian nationals. So one thing to keep in mind. And another thing we see is notario fraud. So in a lot of foreign countries, what happens is attorneys also do the notary, and the
Mhm.
title notario is used in US. And so what they do is those people can actually do a notary, but that's about it. They can't act as a lawyer, they can't represent people. But these people act like they're lawyers. They give false immigration advice, they charge people. We have seen people where people got duped by them because they said, hey, you can get a green card if you do a filing certain way, and they cheat people. So remember, there are a lot of false people who pose as legal professionals or people who can do notary, but they might not be lawyers. And there are ways. So the way you avoid it is you can always find out if somebody is a lawyer or not. Every state has a state bar, and one can verify if somebody is a licensed lawyer or not. That should be public information. So always do not work with anybody who is engaging in unauthorized practice of law. If somebody is not a lawyer but
Mhm.
acts like a lawyer, there is a good chance that you might get duped, because a lot of immigrants require the help of lawyers. So just be careful that whoever you are working with is an actual lawyer, because if somebody dupes you into thinking that they're an attorney, they file some cases for you. You might be in
Mhm.
trouble down the line. I've had a case where somebody from India, he was told by somebody to claim asylum. So this person applied for asylum, and he thought the other person was a lawyer, so he believed whatever he said. And this guy applied for asylum. He paid a lot of money, I think almost $20,000. And this asylum
Mm-hmm.
application, I mean, it was all a made up application. And this guy assumed that it's a valid application, and he waited. And eventually, when he came to us, we found out that he was out of status for such a long time. So be careful. And if you're working with a lawyer who claims they can do something, always make sure that they're reputable lawyers. And not only that, they're licensed. Every lawyer, it's a licensed profession, which means if a lawyer is not licensed, they're not allowed to practice law. So be cautious about these fraudulent attorneys who are not really attorneys but claim they are attorneys. And one very important one is the job offer scams. So the job offer scams are nothing. So these people, uh, they target people abroad. I mean, I've seen a lot of people in India get targeted. Especially, we see this a lot happening during the H&B lottery time. So there is no real
Mm-hmm.
job. They just spin up companies here, and the companies are fake companies. Maybe, I mean, they exist in reality. They are registered, but a company just getting registered does not mean it's a real company. But what we see is people show those companies, people target people abroad, maybe in India, and they say, "Hey, we have a H-1B filing that we are going to do for you because we have a job opportunity." There is no real job opportunity, and in the process, what they do is they ask for fees, maybe for, fees for paying H1, maybe upfront fees for processing, documentation, etc. And these people are targeting these highly qualified people, and these people think that, hey, we have a real job offer in US because we are qualified. And sometimes people fall for it and pay money for H1B processing, etc. And
Mm-hmm.
anytime somebody asks you money for any H1B processing or any visa processing charges, upfront something could be wrong. Okay, so because an employer cannot charge any processing fees for this job visas, especially the H1B visa, the L1, etc. So always do your
Mm-hmm.
research, and legitimate employers, they typically do not ask money for visa processing. So if anybody's asking you to pay for a H1B filing, pay for visa processing, something is wrong. And that tells you that you're probably getting scammed, and probably you have to do some more research, maybe even make a formal
True.
complaint with USCIS or a US embassy and so on.
So true,
And
so
I
true.
think
Because
phone and email
nobody
scams are something.
nobody can really speed up the process. Really, I mean, no matter how much you pay anyone, what is there,
Yeah.
and no, yes, that's it. So Chandi was saying,
Yeah, I mean, sometimes people, I mean, speeding up a process is possible because, for example, for H1, there is something called
yes,
premium processing. So legally,
premium process,
people can pay money and get the process speeded up. So legally, there is a way.
right?
So, but again, people have to be cautious. At least they have to do some research, especially if they're asking them to pay some processing fees. Always do some research,
Right.
because some could be, the only thing that is legal is the premium processing fees. So the premium processing fees to speed up a H1B case, that is the only fees that can be charged to the employee. But other than premium
Yeah.
processing fees, pretty much there is no fees that the employee can be asked to pay. So
Mm-hmm.
anytime, in general, the general rule of thumb should be, if somebody is asking you to pay some money for visa processing or H1B processing, take a step back, do your research, and more than likely it is not legal. And then some phone and email scams. We have seen so many
Yes.
times, so many people from India fall prey to this phone and email scams. They get a phone call. Somebody asks them to pay because they're in some trouble. They say they're a government official. And we'll talk more about these phone and email scams in today's session. But
Yes.
people can get phone calls, get scammed. People can get emails, look at some of the documents. The documents look real, and they can
Mm-hmm.
get scammed. So be extremely cautious about phone and email scams. We have seen people getting links to pay online, and they think that it
Mm-hmm.
is from their friend, and they get scammed. So phone and email scams are very common, and we have seen people lose thousands of dollars on these scams. I mean,
True.
they don't look like something that are like that easy, but I don't know how they do it. But we have seen so many people scammed. Our own clients get scammed with phone and email scams. So I think in general, I mean, the goal should be avoid these kind of scams. And what that means is always look at websites like USCIS or the consulate,
Hmm.
which is Department of State, for accurate information. Don't rely on third-party websites. Typically, most of the
Hmm.
information about immigration, at least in US, either Department of State or USCIS, most of the time they will have that information. And always verify the credentials. If you are working with any attorney, always verify the credentials. It's very easy. You can go online, you can check. Every state has a way to verify if an attorney is licensed in that state or not. And it's very easy, but people should take some time to verify the credentials. And always
Right, right.
be skeptical about any guarantees. Be wary of anyone promising guaranteed results. Uh,
Hmm.
Immigration outcomes cannot be guaranteed. If an attorney is saying, "Hey, 100%, I think your case is going to get approved," normally they don't say that unless there is like something really, really strong. Okay, I mean nobody's going to guarantee a result. Okay, but again, facts of the case, they can tell you if your case is strong or weak. That being said,
Hmm.
if somebody is saying, "Hey, pay this money and we will guarantee you this return, this outcome," definitely there's something wrong. You cannot pay any money to guarantee a result. Okay, that's very important. And scams, if you think something is wrong, you're getting scammed, report it to the
Hmm.
authorities. I know sometimes, a lot of times, it's the cultural difference. Somebody's coming from a different country to US, at least initially. I mean,
Hmm.
people take time to adjust. A lot of times people are victims of a crime, but they are hesitant to go out and complain. So if you are ever a victim of any crime, whether it's physical violence, if it is scamming, internet scamming, email scamming, phone scamming, any kind of something that you feel you're a victim of something, there
Hmm.
is a very good criminal justice system out here. You might be able to complain it to the law enforcement in US. You might be able to uh, complain to the Federal Trade Commission, depending on whether it's an internet crime. And sometimes you might even
Hmm.
be able to complain it to the law enforcement in India if you're getting scammed by somebody who's got ties in India and something is happening. So always remember that if you are a victim, there is nothing to be scared. Always look for getting help from the law enforcement agencies and stay educated. I think doing so, I think, is going to protect uh, everybody from falling victim to various scams in either United States or even in India or maybe both.
True. True. So, friends, I think you should always be careful, especially, if you feel skeptical about payments or somebody on a call or email asking for more personal details, stuff like that. So, be more cautious and do your research properly and try never to, fall prey into any sort of scams for that matter. So, I think we are going to dive deeper. So, let's move on to the next question that I have for you, Chand. And if you could tell us, how individuals can protect themselves from falling victim to scams that exploit ignorance about immigration systems, law, and even cultural norms.
Sure. So, in order to protect oneself and from scams, these scams typically exploit ignorance about immigration systems. They exploit ignorance about the laws and the differences in cultural norms. They use this, they exploit them. And
Mhm.
what people should do is you should take proactive measures. So, you should always assume that there are so many bad people out there and who could scam you. So always be proactive and always strategize yourself. The first way is education. I mean, you have to educate yourself that in US, the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, USCIS, they deal with immigration. So they have a very good website. They have so many useful articles. They have pretty much every information you can get about the visas, about the green cards, and so on. So that should be your primary source of legal information, source of your immigration law. So it is USCIS. And then we also have the consulates, which come under Department of State, and they have their own websites. So everybody should be aware of the USCIS websites and the DOS, Department of State's websites. And most of the immigration questions regarding the law, you will find an answer in these websites, in these two websites. So educating yourself and knowing where to reach out, that's pretty important. And then uh, everybody should familiarize yourself with the process. So familiarity is basically saying, hey, if you are on a H-1B visa, you can't stay forever on a H-1B visa. There is a limit of 6 years on H-1B visa. So you have to actually do something, which is basically get a green card filing sponsorship. So that has to happen. And a lot of people, unfortunately, they don't familiarize themselves with immigration systems. So we see a lot of people they come to us in the fifth year of their H1, and they
Mm.
realize that they can't stay in the country after 6 years. So they are out of luck. So everybody should know what the visa categories out there for them, what kind of application procedures are out there, what kind of timelines. Because if you have to file an H1B extension, you need to know what kind of timelines you're looking at. So by educating yourself and knowing everything about the process, at least the high level process, you'll not let people scam you. Somebody cannot come and say, hey, you have to pay so much for your H1B. Or we have a lot of cases where there's scamming companies, even employers, bad employers who indulge in human trafficking. They don't pay their employees on time. So by understanding the legal processes, knowing the laws, you at least know what to do if whether you're a victim of a crime or not. I mean, we have a lot of cases where people are not paid on H1B, and these people think, hey, I'm not on a project, so my employer is not paying me, but I can't really force my employer to pay me because I'm not on a project. So people don't even know. I mean, sometimes people don't know the law. Even if you're not on a project, benching is illegal. And what that means is, as an employer, the employer is still supposed to pay you, even if you're not on a project. So sometimes knowing the law will let you know if you're a victim or not, because we hear from a lot of people who think they're not a victim. They think it is just a part of the process why they're not paid because they're on the bench. So know the law, and that way don't let employers exploit you or exploit the laws of US. So it's very important. And also always verify the credentials. So if you have a legal problem, you're going to some attorney, verify their credentials. And the same thing, I mean, if you are ever in any legal issue or need some legal help, don't just go to anybody that claims that they know the law, or they act like they're practicing the law. There is a way to check, and you should be able to verify the credentials from the state bar associations, and ensure you take help only from licensed attorneys. If somebody is not a licensed attorney, they cannot give you legal advice. Okay, so just be cautious about it. And the way I see it is, anybody that is licensed and practices immigration law typically will know what's going on. At least they'll be able to point out if they're not able to help. So always look for that. And uh, always be aware of anybody asking you for upfront fees. Legitimate services don't typically require large upfront payments. Okay, so if somebody, you're trying to ask for some application assistance, maybe you're going to an attorney for some assistance, if they're quoting you a big fee, I mean, again, always what you should do is you should at least get some second opinions. You should talk to multiple law firms if you feel that somebody is charging you a lot. Okay, because everybody's pricing is different. Uh, but again, from your perspective, if you ever think that somebody is asking you to pay something upfront, a very high amount, you should at least look around, talk to your friends, talk to other attorneys to make sure the fee is legitimate and somebody is not charging
Mm.
you more than what they should. And not only that, non-attorneys like employers or somebody out in the society, if somebody is asking you to pay some fees to do some immigration work for you and charging you, uh, be cautious and just see what's going on. And always use secure communication. And what that means is, just make sure, um, I mean, if you're making any payments and somebody sent you an email with some account numbers or anything, just be cautious. Make sure you're not being I mean, uh, I mean, what some people do is they spoof email accounts. They make it sound like they're coming from legitimate emails, and this with this kind of spoofing and phishing going on, they make you pay because you assume that you're probably paying the right money to something. Maybe they're saying, "Hey,
Right.
this is your apartment rent. This is the link to pay." Make it sound like it's your apartment rental company, and maybe the email, they make it sound like it's your apartment rental company, but it's probably not. It's probably some scamster. So if you see anything suspicious and things out of the normal, always be suspicious.
Mm.
Always uh, I mean, anytime you're making any payment, always be cautious. Use the good practices, and always know whom to seek support from. So there are many community organizations. I mean, whether you're a victim of some crime or you're scammed, you're a victim of some domestic violence, there are many community organizations that assist. And so you should always know what community organizations assist. There are Catholic charities, and there are many organizations for victims of domestic violence, and there is so many things happening. So always know the community organizations, and proactively know who's out there in your local city and so on. And always protect your personal information. And the final thing is always report scams. So if you're ever scammed, report. If you don't report and you think it's a small dollar amount, so you're leaving it, what's going to happen is these scamsters are going to target somebody else. So always report scams. And by reporting scams, you'll help everybody else involved, and know whom to report, and always report these scams. And doing so, I think we believe that you can protect yourself from falling a victim to all these scams out there.
So true, so true. So, friends, I think the main way out is knowledge, learning, wisdom. So, the more you know about all this, the more you can save yourself, or at least you can know your way out, whether you're getting scammed or whether it's true, whatever the other person is telling you. So, find out and stay safe. All right. Now moving on to another question that we have for you. But I think, Chand, I'll just greet our audience out there. Thank you so much for joining us and also for your questions. We are definitely going to take each one of yours, so stay with us. Sagar, Avinash, Rahul, Ishwar, Anjali, Mehta, thank you so much for all of your questions. And absolutely, we will take one. But I think, Chand, let's move on with the next question that I have for you. What steps should someone take immediately, if they suspect that they are a victim of an immigration scam?
So if you suspect that somebody is trying to scam you, I think definitely, I think stop all interactions with them and cease communications, and log all their emails or messages or phone calls that you think they called from. So once you document, stop communications and gather this information. And if you think it has something to do with because if you think somebody probably breached your account, and because we have seen cases where somebody's email, people went into their email, they saw their friends, their contact list, and they sent emails spoofing their friends email addresses. So if you think that something of that sort is happening, always change your passwords, especially for your online accounts, for your banks and so on. And the next biggest thing is reporting. Okay, so anyway, I think everybody that suspects they're getting scammed will do these things, changing passwords and reporting to the bank, monitoring accounts. The biggest thing I think everybody should do is reporting the scam. How do you report scams? So in US, if it is an internet, if it is a scam, if it is some kind of a fraud or fraudulent activity or a scam that's happening, the first place that I think you should file a report is FTC. FTC stands for Federal Trade Commission, and the website is ftc.gov. So there is something called reportfraud.ftc.gov, or you can just like Google FTC, Federal Trade Commission fraud reporting. You'll see a link come up. So that is the first place I think everybody should report if they suspect fraud, and it will help the federal authorities to track and prevent scams. So FTC is a very famous website for reporting fraud. So always remember FTC, and that should be the first place. And if you are getting scammed over the internet, maybe somebody is making you pay some money to them or internet. So there is another thing called IC3. It's an Internet Crime Complaint Center in US. The website is ic3.gov. Most of the government websites end with .gov. That's how you know it's a legitimate government website. So ic3.gov is typically used for white collar crime or internet crime. So it's a very, very good website. So uh, uh, and even FBI also kind of uses ic3.gov. So definitely, if you have any internet crime, use Internet Crime Complaint Center at ic3.gov. That's a good place to complain. And local law enforcement. So when you talk about local law enforcement, we're talking about the local police in your city. And always you also probably should call the police department, or maybe go to their office and also talk to the police department, because worst case, if they're not handling it because it's a federal crime or something under federal jurisdiction, they will at least tell you. So always I think you should also go to the local police department. And the local police department, depending on the crime, sometimes they'll be able to act on it, and sometimes at least they will guide you and tell you what to do as the next steps. And if it's a pure immigration kind of a scam, immigration fraud, maybe your employer is scamming you, employer is charging you money, employer is not paying you on time. For those kind of USCIS scams, there is this website on USCIS. So USCIS website is uscis.gov. And if you just Google scams fraud USCIS, you'll see a link pop up. So report on the scams fraud link at USCIS website. And anything to do with immigration, somebody is doing some kind of an immigration fraud, always report it to USCIS. Okay. And once you do that, always, if you think, depending on the kind of money you're looking at, kind of scamming that has happened, always reach out to the attorney or at least to legal aid organizations in your local city. Because if you don't have money for an attorney, legal aid organizations, they will help you. They will help you for free. And you should definitely talk to some legal aid organizations in your local city. And so I think that is what you have to do. And our thing is always, if you don't report scams, if you don't report fraud, what's going to happen is these people will become more braver. So just know these links that I told you. FTC is one, IC3 is one, USCIS is one. And these three are very, very critical, that I think everybody should report if they are scammed. And then your local police, okay, depending on the kind of a crime, always your local police is also your best friend.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for guiding us through this. I mean, very important thing to keep in mind because we sometimes panic, and when we get panic, especially when we fall prey into these kind of fraudulent activities, we get scared, and sometimes we are scared to tell our loved ones also. But I think it's best to just go report them. And I hope you took notes, by the way, friends, because Chand had some important tips and notes to give out there. But even if not, I mean, this webinar is going to be published as soon as the streaming is over, so you can always listen to it and note down the details. Thank you so much, Chand. And definitely, friends, we will take up your questions. Sagar, Avinash, thank you. And also, Chaitanya, we will take up your questions, but please stay with us. It's actually time for a short break now. So stay tuned. We will return and we'll continue our conversation with none other than Attorney Chant Parvathaneni and about how you can protect yourself and your loved ones from immigration scams. We'll be right back on Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. Don't go anywhere.
Consultant seeking a new opportunity? We offer job placement services for US citizens, green cards, EADs, and visa holders. We also sponsor various work visas like H1B, E3, TN, and green cards. 20 plus years of experience in the industry, exceptional employee benefits, highly rated by our employees, global presence with 200 plus recruiters and direct clients. Connect with us. Call us in the number 408 335 6444 or mail us at nipa@higheritpeople.com or visit our website www.higheritpeople.com.
Welcome back, friends, to Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. I'm Nipasa Pradhan, your host for today, and today we are discussing, how you can save yourself from scams and also your loved ones. What are the common immigration scams, and how can you report them? With none other than Attorney Chant Parvathaneni. This is the second half, so welcome back, friends. And if you want to also contact Attorney Chant Parvathaneni directly, we have his contact details. It keeps scrolling on the screen, but also you can note it down right now. It's 817-523-8247. Once again, I repeat, 817-523-8247. And you can email him, and his email address is law@spblawfirm.com. And also go check out the website spblawfirm.com to get to know more about the law firm and also Chant Pravathaneni. Chan, thank you so much. It's been so far so good, insightful, informative, and interesting. So I think we should take a question from the audience right now.
Yes.
Let's take up Chaitanya. Hello, if an employer commit to file perm during working period, but if they don't, will it be considered a scam?
Um, so, uh, so when we talk about scam, I think scam is a little different. It's more on the criminal side. So, in US, what happens is people make promises, and sometimes those promises could be binding. When the
Mhm.
promise rises to the level of being a binding promise because it meets the definition of a contract, it's a contract. So, if the employee and the employer they entered into some kind of an agreement where the employer promised to file the perm in return for something, maybe in return for the employee
Mhm.
working for them. I think what would happen is if the employer breaches a contract, it's more of a civil kind of a case. It's a civil issue where it is not a criminal issue, but more employee broke the promise kind of a thing. So the employer broke the promise kind of a thing. The recourse is probably you have to go to the civil uh, courts and
Mhm.
maybe fight for breach of contract, maybe fight for damages because of breach of contract. Again, there is no guarantee that somebody might win because the employer is not really obligated. I mean, they don't really have to file a perm, but again, you can't really enter into a contract with somebody and not honor it. So depending on what kind of evidence they have and what kind of maybe a written agreement or something of that sort, it is more of a civil case, but not of a scam. Scam is where people get defrauded, and it's a little different. Okay, but again, definitely, I mean, if somebody entered into a contract and broke it, there is recourse, but that's on the civil side, not really on the criminal side.
Okay. Thank you so much, Chan, for that answer. And Chaitanya, I hope that was pretty clear. Thank you. And if you have any further questions, you can keep dropping them in the comments. Let's take up this next one. This is on Facebook from Rahul Kumar. In the very first step for H-1B visa, how to identify the geniusness of selection notice. What all red flags can be checked over the selection notice as the applicant can't verify the same at their end?
Right. So I think we had a couple of questions even at our law firm because some people just call us and say, "Hey, my employer gave me this selection notice. How do I know if it is genuine or not? Is it fraud or anything?" And my thing is, unfortunately, you can't type in that number anywhere and find out if it is a real number or not. That being said, no employer will typically give them a fraudulent document. Tampering with any federal document, like a selection notice. Selection notice is a government issued document. If somebody tampers with the document, changes the name of one person to another person, and gives somebody a fake document, they will have criminal implications because that's a big issue. If anybody is uh, tampering and doing some kind of changes to a government issued document. So in general, it is very rare that some employer will give them a selection notice that is fraudulent. But unfortunately, I mean, again, the employee cannot check whether it's genuine or not unless you get on a Zoom call with the employer and maybe ask him to log into the USCIS portal right in front of you and show it to you. But otherwise, I mean, just looking at the document, I mean, you just have to assume it is true and genuine. But for some reason, you eventually find out that there is some kind of uh, uh, tampering with the document and they changed something, they altered the document. To me, I mean, that probably would arise to the uh, a standard where you're probably scammed by somebody by altering a government document, and you might be able to report it, and then probably you might be able to have recourse. So, I mean, it is pretty rare. I mean, people don't do those kinds of stuff. Not that I've not seen people do that. But again, it's very rare. But if somebody is so foolish enough to alter a government issued document, there are criminal implications for that act.
Thank you so much for making that very clear. And yes, the how to identify the genuineness of selection notice. Thank you so much, Rahul, for your question as well. Um, Chand, let's take another one quickly. This is on YouTube. This is from Sagar. Okay, Vishnu Vardhan. Let's take this one first. Hello, Chand. I work full time for a company and I got my H-1B for the same company in the US. I am seeing the experience on H1B and found the following question: detailed description of project and services or engagements with client projects. VO returned my passport. Oh, I work.
Okay. So I think, hmm?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it.
So I think what has happened is Vishnu is working in India for the company, and this their office in US sponsored his H1B. He got his probably got his H1B approved because he's going for a visa, and looks like the visa officer returned his passport back, did not do the stamping. So my guess, what
Mhm,
happened is he got a 221G. Vishnu probably got a 221G, and I think what the visa officer is going to do is he's going to initiate a background check, and the Department of State, they're going to do some background checks, maybe contact the company in US, verify the information, and at a certain point down the line they will ask for a passport to issue the visa stamp if everything checks out, if they pass all the background checks. So
mhm,
what more than likely happened is your case is refused. It's not denied. Your visa is refused for now. And once all the checks are completed, at that point of time, you might expect a call from the consulate asking you to drop your passport. And at that point of time, you'll be able to get a, a visa. But I think
mhm.
you have to probably wait for some time because the consulate is going to do all these background checks, maybe get in touch with the company in US. And down the line, you can expect a request from the consulate and get a stamp on your passport.
Okay. All the best, Vishnu. Thank you so much for your question as well. And thank you, Chant, for taking that up. Okay, let's move to Sagar's question now, quickly. This is on YouTube. Hi. Hi. Can H4 holder work in US? I heard news that court gave permission to work. Is this valid news? If yes, should we need to file petition again for H4?
So the rule is the H4 holders by themselves cannot work. The H4 holder should have their H1B spouse get an I-140 approval. So this rule is again the old rule. So the new rule, what I think you've heard in the news lately, it is just them saying that the old rule still stays. So the old rule is to file to for the H1 for the H4 holder to work in US, you need to file for something called H4 EAD, and as a part of it you have to show that your spouse has an I-140 approval. So if your spouse has an I-140 approval, you have to actually apply for the I-765 EAD card, and only then after it's approved you can work. So just a H4 holder by them, I mean, they cannot just by the H4 status you cannot start working. You actually have to apply for EAD card, you actually have to have your spouse's I-140 approval, and only then you should be able to work.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much, Chant, for taking that up. And I think now we will quickly move back to our questions, some of which I have for you too. So, okay, there was a follow up actually from Vishnu Vardhan saying, if you get laid off before H1B stamp, what are my options? And since I don't have my H1B visa stamp, will my current I-797B become invalid?
So if you get laid off, what will happen is you cannot get a visa because you'll not be eligible to get the visa. But what will happen, because even if you get the visa, you can't really come to US because when you at the port of entry they will block you because you have to show employment when you come into the country. But what you can do is, if you get laid off, you have to find a new employer. The new employer has to file a H1B. And when the new employer
Mhm.
files a H1B, because you had approval in the past, you're cap exempt. So the new employer,
Yes.
once they have that approval copy, you can either go for stamping if you have not received stamping. And if you have received stamping,
Mhm.
you can use the old visa, the old stamping with the old employer's name, but you have to carry the new H1B approval. And at the port of entry, you have to prove that the day you get down the plane and you go into the country, you are actually going to work for that company. So if you get laid off, normally what happens is you're stuck until you find a new employer. The new employer files a
Mhm.
H1B petition. Once that gets approved, you should be able to travel. Okay, the good thing is at least you don't have to go through the lottery again, but you definitely have to have a new employer before you can
Okay.
come into the country.
Okay. All the best, Vishnu. I think you are sure going to figure out. And also Rahul Kumar, whose question we just took up on Facebook, also has another follow up. I think we should just take that too. Um, w- why this has been asked, because the identification of letters over the selection notice is being compared with other selection notice, and the barcode number is not matching with the BCN. In my understanding, BCN must be matching with the barcode number. Please correct me if that is not true.
I'm not sure. I mean, I've not really reviewed the selection notices that closely. But again, if it's a
Mhm.
doubt that you have, just like check with the employer and put it in writing. I mean, anytime you suspect something is wrong, what we always recommend is don't call them on the phone and say something. Just document it in the email, because if something is wrong tomorrow, you have documentation. So just document it,
Right.
ask them what's going on, and ask them, because if the employer really wants to prove it to you, they can just get on a Zoom call, just log into the my USCIS portal right in front of you, and show it to you.
Exactly.
Uh, but again, I mean, to me, I mean, somebody is really foolish to tamper with those selection notices. So it's rare people do that. But I mean, if you really think that something is wrong, call them. Just simply, I mean, in 5 minutes in a Zoom call, they can log into my USCIS and right in front of you and show it to you.
There you go, Rahul. You at least know how to go about this. So, all the best. All right. So, I think we should take up more questions. Yeah, let's take Deepak. Deepak is also asking on YouTube. I am an international student in the US, and I recently discovered that my university is not accredited by the relevant authorities. Is this a scam? Can I transfer my SEVIS record to a different university? And what implications might this have on my immigration status?
So it's probably not a scam, because if the university informed you that it is an accredited school, then it is probably a scam. But if the university never told you it is an accredited school, and you just assumed it's an accredited school, it's not really a scam. And the reason for that is the data is it's public data. You can actually go and check if the school is accredited or not. We have a lot of people who graduate from schools which are not accredited on F1 visa, and what that means is they cannot really use the degree later on. So technically tomorrow we can't use that degree from an unaccredited school for immigration, because we had a lot of cases where people went to schools that are not accredited, or down the line they lost accreditation. So I mean, all that means is that degree is not useful to you, so you should definitely transfer your service. So check with
Mhm,
a school that interests you. Check with the school DSO, and normally what they will do is, if your service is active, they should be able to transfer you to that school. So I would
mhm.
definitely recommend you transferring to a new school as soon as possible. And what that means is you're working with a new school, get your admission and get your I-20. Make sure the school DSO transfers your service record, and as long as your service record is active, they should be able to transfer you.
All right. All the best, Deepak, and I hope you figure out. All right, Chand, there was this recent case which we all must have heard on the news about this Indian student, this 19-year-old who managed to, um, well, get a full scholarship to Lehigh University. So, if you could also get a chance to go through maybe the case or heard of it, if you could tell us, what are your thoughts on the legal and ethical implications of such fraudulent activities, and how can institutions and authorities better prevent and address these kinds of issues?
Sure. So everything we talked about so far was immigrants getting scammed. So you're talking about how people from other
Right,
countries were getting scammed. So this case, it's a case where the university got scammed. The university here
right.
and the institute here, they got scammed by an immigrant, by a non-immigrant. So what happened is this kid from India. So he created all these fake documents, fake tax documents, fake death certificate about
Right.
his dad, and fake
Yes.
mark certificates. He even created a fake email address for his school back in India,
Yes.
and he applied for scholarship.
Impersonating. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think his goal was to prove that he is a student that uh, is a very highly qualified student. So he showed all his school records to prove that he's a very high quality student. 12th grade student. I mean, he did
Hmm.
this in 11th, 12th grade back in India. So he showed all his 11th and 12th grade records, school records, to this US university, Lehigh University in Pennsylvania. And the university thought he's a very, very bright student. And
Yes.
they looked at his dad's death certificate, his financial data. They felt that this is a kid that's in hardship. He's a very talented kid, but he doesn't really have the resources to pay. So they offered him a good
Hmm.
scholarship and everything. And this kid came from India to US to study. And what this kid
Yes.
did is he went into Reddit, and in Reddit he started writing some messages, and
Yes.
anonymously, of course. So anonymously he wrote a message and said, hey, this is how I scammed the US system, and this is how I got my scholarship by making all these fraudulent documents. And
Right.
Reddit, what they did is the minute they saw his messages, the moderators got aware. They did some background check, and they saw that this kid also follows the Lehigh University posts. So they didn't
Mm.
know because he was anonymous, but they at least informed Lehigh University and said, "Do you have anybody that fits this profile?" And
Hmm.
eventually, I think they started doing more investigation, and this happened very recently. They finally
Hmm.
found who this kid is because they did find that some kid who fits this profile. Father is dead, doesn't make a lot of money, getting scholarship. So all that profile fit.
Yes.
They eventually found who this kid is, and eventually that kid was caught. He agreed because he didn't have a choice. He's getting deported back. He's been charged with
Yes.
some criminal charges, and what that means is scamsters can be from both sides. There are scamsters in US, there are scamsters in India. So it's never that it's
Yes.
always immigrants who get scammed. There are bad people everywhere. And that's what happened.
Hmm.
In this case, the US university, the US system got scammed. And if not for the guy actually going on to Reddit and proclaiming his things, maybe he would have not
Hmm.
got caught. And maybe the US would have been a victim of his crime. So the bottom line is there are bad people everywhere, and people have to report it. If you see scams, you have to report it. That is the only way to stop other people from doing more scams.
Exactly. Exactly. You have to report it. You have to stop it, and only then people will also learn from whatever is being recorded and reported. So yes, actions will always be taken. Moving on, Chand, I have more questions for you. If you can tell us about, since we've been speaking a lot about the scams, and if you can actually tell us how can individuals verify, the authenticity of someone claiming to be from the USCIS? Are there specific steps or contacts they should use? I mean, you told us about the real websites, but also more if you can add anything.
Yeah. So we have had this a lot of times, and sometimes it is genuine. We have people calling and saying they're USCIS officers. We have
Mhm.
just yesterday evening, I had a call where this officer from the airport, the CBP officer, he called this company, and the company was like, they just thought it was a prank call, and they just shouted at this officer and just like hung up. And later on, they realized and they called him back. So sometimes you might get a call from a USCIS officer, you might get a call from a CBP officer, and sometimes it's a fake call. And so that's why it is very important that you really know how to find out if the call is really coming from a USCIS officer or not. And thing is, sometimes they ask personal information, even the genuine calls. So sometimes you're worried: is it really a real government officer, or is it really a fraudster? Um, and the times USCIS officer calls somebody is they want to make sure somebody is working as required under H1B. They're getting paid as required. So sometimes it does happen that USCIS officer will call you, and a CBP officer also might call you. So people, what I think you should do is, if somebody is threatening you on the phone, being very unprofessional, they're asking for some financial information, they're asking you for payments, more than likely that is a scam. If it's a real USCIS officer, if it's a real CBP officer, they are very, very professional, and they are not threatening, and they don't ask you for any financial information. So they don't ask you for your bank accounts, they don't ask you to pay any money. So the first sign that somebody might not be from USCIS or CBP or any other government office is, if you feel that the way they're talking is threatening, they're trying to blackmail you, they're trying to get money out of you, definitely this is not something what the government officers do. So that's your first indication, because sometimes we have heard people call us and say somebody called and said it's an IRS officer, a tax officer. So be cautious. I mean, so what you should do if somebody says they're a government officer, this is what you should do. If you suspect something wrong, simply politely tell the officer, we don't know if you're real or not. Simply send us an email from your official email to my email, okay, and put your official contact details in the email. The USCIS officers will not never have a problem with that. I've never seen a USCIS officer say, "No, I'll not email you," because they understand. I mean, people sometimes get wary if they're real or not. And these government officials, their email address always ends in .gov. So if they send you an email, you can always reply back to them and say, "Hey, I'm replying back. Just please confirm that you are who you are." Okay, basically, that's one way. Always try to get an email and ask them to verify through email, and at least contact you through email. And that way, once that contact is done, then maybe you can call them back and talk to them and cooperate with them, because you do want to cooperate with government officials. So, but again, there is nothing wrong in you trying to validate that they're a real government officer. That's very important. And again, the main thing is try to validate their phone numbers and so on. So you can always Google their phone numbers, and when they call you, take their number and you always call them back, because sometimes they can spoof a number. So they might make it sound like on your caller ID, it might look like it's a real government number, but when you call them back at that number, they might not exist. So always take their number, Google that number, and always call them back. What I always suggest is ask them to email you their entire contact information, ensure that they have a .gov email, and then initiate conversation. And that being said, no USS officer, no government officer will ever ask you to pay any money to them, never threaten you with an arrest. So if somebody is doing that over the phone, upfront you can assume that they are fraud, and immediately involve, either if you have an employer, involve your employer, or definitely the best recommended approach is involve a lawyer or an attorney. Okay, so don't ever pay anybody any money, because they're threatening you with arrest. They're threatening you that you've done something wrong, you overstayed your visa, so you have to pay some money or anything. So anytime somebody is threatening you with something on the phone, there is something going on. These government officers are very, I mean, professional. They don't threaten you. They probably ask you for information, and they're always willing to send you an email and confirm their identity. Okay, so that's how I think you should always verify if somebody is a USCIS officer or a government officer.
There you go, friends. Thank you so much, Chand, for making that so clear. And yes, I'm sure people listening to us right now, they'll feel more confident to deal with all these kinds of cases if they are ever exposed to all these types of scams we have discussed today. And I think I have one last question for you, Chand, because I was telling earlier, since we really see so much about all these types of scams, in different news about immigration fraud or is really scams every day almost. So, can you provide or tell us about one or two very recent cases, case study examples, if you can remember, or maybe share a few lessons and takeaways also from these cases?
Sure. So I had one case very recently where somebody was called on the phone. She was the H4 spouse,
Mhm,
and she was called on the
mhm,
phone, and she was told that the other side was a government official, and she was threatened about arrest. They said something that her husband has done something wrong, and she's going to be arrested very soon, and she
mhm,
immediately has to pay some money for getting bail. And they told her not to get off of the phone, and I don't know how they convinced her, but again, sometimes people get scared because people follow the process, and if somebody calls them on the phone and says something, sometimes people under that stress, they believe that that is true, and they would not let this person get off of the phone. And they made her like transfer this money and do all these things, and she lost $3,000. It's a big number for that person, and she was devastated. That whole experience was traumatic. And not only, I mean, not one, I've seen multiple cases in our law firm where people, they were called and they were told not to get off of the phone. Sometimes people were actually asked to drive and go. So I had a case where somebody had to drive, go to a Kroger, buy some gift cards, and send them gift cards. And when they were being told to buy gift cards and give them the gift card information, even then they did not suspect,
mhm,
because in that stress, sometimes people don't think right. So in that stress, they went and bought some gift cards and gave all this gift card information to this other side. and that's it. There is not even a way to retrieve that money back. So at least, I mean, I've recently seen those issues. And sometimes, again, if somebody calls you on the phone and says they're a government officer, not always it is fraud. Because yesterday evening, I had this case where this company's employee came from India. At the port of entry, they stopped this employee, and then they called the employer. An employer thought it was fraud. An employer refused to answer it on the phone. But luckily, they called us, and then they were able to call CBP back and
Hmm.
verify the information. But because, I mean, these scamsters sometimes even make the real people, the real calls, people sometimes tend to assume that it might be a fraudulent call. So be careful. My
Yes.
thing is, if somebody is threatening you, blackmailing you, asking you to release financial information, trying to get some money out of you, that is the biggest indicator of fraud on the phones or on the emails. So that is where I think, definitely, I think, be cautious.
Right, right. I mean, all sorts of scams, not just immigration. And people nowadays are so much into this. There are so many groups out there, notorious groups, trying to have successful fraudulent activities everywhere possible. There are calls every
And
day about
unfortunately, I
from different
mean,
banks.
yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, and unfortunately, sometimes we have heard that these calls are originating in India, and because even Indian government is like very actively works with U.S. law enforcement. I mean, people in India got
yes,
arrested because they're trying to scam U.S. People, U.S. senior citizens, U.S. immigrants, and so on. So, I mean, these bad people are everywhere. These bad people are in India. They're probably in Africa. They're probably in some other countries. So, I mean, it's
yes,
sad, but there are bad people out there and trying to do these kinds
it's
of stuff
happening.
and scam other people. Yeah.
Yes, and every day we are hearing all these sorts of news. We hear our friends and loved ones being, you know, getting calls of all these sorts. Some, they reject, but some they fall prey, and it's sad because there's so much loss of money and so many things, right, Chand? Especially money, I
Yes.
think it's
Yes.
mostly payment based. Yes. Thank you
Yes,
so
and that's
much,
why I
Chand. I
think
mean, this was,
discussions like
yeah,
this, yeah, yeah,
sorry.
discussions like this at least bring out that kind of awareness, and hopefully, I think, I mean, people don't fall for those kinds of tricks.
Yes, right, right. So there were so many important topics we discussed, important things to keep in mind. Do listen to this whole episode again. And also Rahul Kumar is asking once again, is it possible that someone can be picked up in H1B lottery in the first and the second draw? I don't think so.
No, it's not possible. And I mean, if somebody, because especially this year, if somebody is picked up in the lottery the first time, they went based on their passport, unique passport. So it is
Yes.
not likely that they can be picked up in the second draw. And in the second
Mhm.
draw, the USCIS announced the data. Only around 13,000 people got selected. In the first lottery, around 113,000 got selected. So the second lottery was very, very small lottery, and we discussed this like
Yes.
the last month. We were making some predictions. So the lottery was like not a very large lottery. It was a very small lottery, only 13,000 selections, and nothing like last year. So it was a small lottery, and we'll see.
Sure, sure, sure. Also, I mean, we're getting a lot of questions from Vishnu. I would suggest, Vishnu, why not call up Attorney Chand directly, And well, he's also saying, thanks, Chand, for all the answers. Since I had never been to the US, when I find new employer to file my H1B, will they have to provide pay stubs to US for approving it? So I think it'll be best, if you can contact Attorney Chand directly and I mean, do a personal discussion because I'm sure your case is very different and needs. I mean, you have a lot of questions too. So the contact details are on the screen: 817-523-8247. Feel free to leave him a text as well, and you can even email him law@spblawfirm.com or visit his website spblawfirm.com. But thank you so much, Vishnu, for being so participative and for all your questions. Thank you. Chand, is there anything you want to say before we leave today's session and our audience?
Yeah, again, I think just a general reminder that I mean, just follow the rules, and if you ever feel that you're a victim of any crime,
Mhm.
use the resources. There are a lot of good resources both in India and also in US. The law enforcement is strong. Use the resources, and don't ever shy away from reporting crimes or reporting any of these issues. And doing so, not only that you bring awareness, you also stop criminals from targeting other people.
Right, right. Thank you so much, Chand, really. And that's all the time we have for today's webinar. Friends out there, I really want to also say thank you once again to Attorney Chand Parvathaneni, for sharing your expertise with us today. And really, it has been a very enlightening discussion. Thank you all viewers as well for all your lovely questions and yeah, tuning across whether it was YouTube, LinkedIn, or Facebook. Thank you for your questions. And thank you, Chand. Until next time, I hope to see you again in the coming week.
Sure. Thank you so much, Nipasa. Have a good day.
You too, Chan. Thank you. You too, friends out there, have a good day ahead. And thank you so much for joining. You can also contact me in case you're looking for a project placement or anything related to immigration. If you have any questions, why not reach out to me? This is also my WhatsApp number or where you can call me. 408-335-6444, and my email address is nipa@higheritpeople.com. And to get to know more about us, visit us at www.higheritpeople.com. And thank you so much. Really, it was good. And don't forget to subscribe to us because we keep having very important discussions like these, and we also keep updating lots of important news and updates. So subscribe to our channel. Our handle is Immigration and Jobs Talk Show, and we are on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, also Twitter and Instagram. Check us out. Thank you so much. And this is Nipasa Pradhan signing off for now. Stay safe, and thank you all for joining Immigration and Jobs Talk Show.
Consultant seeking a new opportunity? We offer job placement services for US citizens, green cards, EADs, and visa holders. We also sponsor various work visas like H-1B, E3, TN, and green cards. 20 plus years of experience in the industry. Exceptional employee benefits. Highly rated by our employees. Global presence with 200 plus recruiters and direct clients. Connect with us. Call us in the number 408-335-6444 or mail us at nipa@higheritpeople.com or visit our website